Well, welcome in, my faithful podcast listener. Here we are again for the fourth draft. My name is Erin Trafford, and I am so thrilled that you're here. By the way, if you're new here, quick introduction to me. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Story Studio Network, where we produce, create, support the creation of branded podcasts, mainly in Canada, some in the United States. I'm also the co-founder of the new Echo Community Podcast Network, where our first test market launched in September of 2023 in North Bay, Ontario. If you want to know more about that, we have the press releases on our website under the resources tab. StoryStudioNetwork.com. That's where you can find more about that. Or you can just head straight to the Echo website, which is northbayecho.ca. It's pretty cool what we're doing up there. And I launched the fourth draft in October of 2023. And here we are, 8 episodes in. And I think it's time to unpack some of the headlines. And I don't mean the headlines about Canadian news and media. I mean some of the headlines about podcasting. Because there is some cool stuff happening in the podcast world. And I've had a lot of conversations with brands. I mean, it's the middle of Q4. And if you have been in the marketing world at all, or you have entertained branded content, you're talking in November to folks who are going to be ready to spend their ad dollars in April. So we're having a lot of these conversations about 2024 right now, with some really big brands, some big Canadian retail brands, some B2B brands, some social organizations and government agencies, and so on and so forth. We're in all of those conversations. And here's what's coming up is that in general, I'm finding that agencies and brands, marketers really don't understand the options when it comes to podcasting and branded podcasting. So 9 times out of 10, and I can almost like place a bet on it, that I'll get into a call with someone interested in podcasting and they'll ask Story Studio Network, well, what's the reach of your network and how long are the ads? And I say, the reach is dependent on your specific show, because we'll create an entire show for you. You're not buying space in someone else's property. And how long are your ads? I say 30 minutes each, and we'll give you 12. And then they're like, wait a minute. What? And I'm like, imagine your brand got to be at the center of an entire series. And it's your brand at the center of that. That is branded podcasting. So there's lots of ways that we can slice that pie and look at how that adds value to your brand. But all of a sudden, if you take the equation and take it from, I'm doing a media buy and I'm going to be placing 30 or 40 second spots in hundreds of other podcasts and then measuring the results, versus I'm going to take some of my ad spend and create original content that places my brand and my valued customer and audience and listener at the center of that experience, you're comparing apples and oranges. So Story Studio Network specializes in the latter. We specialize in creating branded content for your brand. We can produce an ad for you, but it's not nearly as fun. It is effective, though. I'll say that. Both are extremely effective, but they're extremely different modes of thinking about your content. So being presented with a lot of really smart marketers and a lot of folks who are curious about podcasting, and every single one of them has asked me more questions about how branded content works. I think it's time to have a conversation about that here on the fourth draft, because it is the way of the world. It is the way things are going. It is what is around the corner. And the sooner that we can start to understand how it works, the better off we're going to be. Here's the best way to think about branded content. It is like if you took influencer marketing, advertising, and user-generated content and kind of mushed them all together and created this beautiful, I want to say Frankenbaby, but that makes it sound bad. Although it is the week of Halloween as I'm producing this. So It's a whole bunch of those things all mushed together to create an experience for the listener that just solidifies that brand loyalty. And here's the other thing that it does is it exponentially increases brand recall. I'm going to place in the show notes a link to our in-depth branded podcast report. Download it and read it, because it will give you concrete numbers and stats on how much your brand gets elevated in the minds of your listener after just one episode. They listen to one episode of your branded content and instantly your brand recall jumps through the roof, double digits. It's crazy how effective it is. So I logged in this morning and I have a bit of a Google alert set up for podcasting, because I'm always like, what's going on in the world and, who has what? And this popped up not 2 hours ago. Okay. It's in ad week. I'll also post a link to this in the show notes so that you can read it. But here's the headline. It says, why Wendy's has launched a true crime podcast. Wendy's, the burger joint, launching a true crime podcast. They don't have a podcast about burgers. They don't even have a podcast about the beef industry or the whatever it is, the almost beef industry, that veggie burger kind of approach that a lot of the burger joints are taking now. I can't eat beef, so I always have those like near burgers, almost burgers, veggie burgers, whatever they are. So I saw this and I clicked on it. I thought, well, this is perfect for today's episode of The Fourth Draft, because Wendy's gets it. Wendy's gets it. And the show is called The Burger Files, and they're releasing it in time for the Halloween season. And as you read the article, you see that it's tongue in cheek. It's not meant to be serious. It's quite funny. And it places their signature hamburger called the Baconator at the center of the story. And it is an entire true crime series supported by Wendy's, infused with Wendy's branding and flavor. Okay. And they get it. This is going to be huge for people who listen to this. And I bet you they're going to be able to track how much their listenership grows in a given market and how well the Baconator sells. They're going to get crazy comments. They're going to get massive brand affinity from this. I'm just going to read you a few lines from the Adweek article, because they quote their regional marketing director. Her name is Lisa Delatroz. She says, podcasts are a huge and growing opportunity. Everybody loves true crime, but they also love comedy. And she's absolutely right. Those are two of the top 5 genres for podcasts. Just because that's a genre doesn't mean it can't be branded. She's really smart. She says it's the ability for us to do our tongue-in-cheek approach that we still pride ourselves on by blending true crime and comedy with hamburgers. This is brilliant. By the way, based on my read of this, I think that this is a UK initiative. I don't think this is in the United States or Canada. It doesn't really matter. It proves the point, right? So they've hired some comedy writers, they've hired some TV producers, they've hired great podcast editors and podcast producers. They're creating the entire series, which, as far as I can tell, I haven't listened to it, is entirely scripted. 100 pages of scripting has been written. They are investigating, quote unquote, crimes against burgers. And it is 7 true crime comedy themed episodes. That is branded content, folks. That is a branded podcast. That is a brilliant approach to telling the story of a burger brand. She goes on to say, Wendy's has a long history of innovation in telling their brand story and culture, and has one of the most popular genres of podcasting in the UK. A spin on true crime seemed like the perfect way to tell consumers that they have been settling for convenience over quality in their burgers. Brilliant. I'm going to link to this in the show notes. If you are a Canadian brand, this is how I want to challenge you to start thinking about the potential with your podcast. And you're going to say, well, why wouldn't we do a video series? And here's why. Because a video series will cost you multiple 6 figures. A podcast will cost you not so many multiple 6 figures. It'll still cost a lot of money. I mean, 100 pages of scripting, you've probably got a team of 6 or 7 people working on this. And obviously there's lots of dependencies. Like, are you hiring paid actors? Are you doing your own voice work? Like those kinds of things. Consider that. But video is going to be exponentially more expensive. And it may not necessarily give you the exact same results that you're looking for with a podcast. So take this for what it is. This is a brilliant, brilliant marketing play by Wendy's. I'm going to tell you about a couple other podcasts that I have interacted with that have had the same impact on me. Neither of which I will say are produced by Story Studio Network. So this is me just freely sharing with you what I think is brilliant. So this past summer, my husband and my children and I, we drove halfway across the country in a road trip. Don't recommend. We probably won't do it again. I don't know how I didn't arrive home like battered and bruised, almost. But on our drive back home, we downloaded a podcast called Bringing Back Bronco. Or is it Bring Back Bronco? It's Bringing or Bring. Anyway, Bring Back Bronco. And it was produced by a Canadian company for Ford Motor Company in the States in advance of them bringing back the newly redesigned Ford Bronco. And if you have lived longer than, 35 years, you will remember the Bronco being the center of the O.J. Simpson whole debacle, right? When he was in that white Bronco driving down the highway in California, rapid speed. It was the first televised high-speed chase, all of those things. Okay. There's a lot of baggage in the Bronco brand. When you listen to Bring Back Bronco, that's 8 episodes, it increases the baggage. It explains what went into the design of the Bronco, how it almost went into bankruptcy, how when the Chevy Blazer came out, they faced huge competition, how it defined the class of SUV. We didn't really have SUVs before then as mass market, highly desirable vehicles. It was either a car or a truck. You learn a lot about the history of the Ford Motor Company and how they keep things secret and how they develop things and how things get pushed off the desk and executive infighting and disagreements and all of these things. And at the end, you know what happens? This certainly happened to me, is you start to notice Broncos on the road more. You notice them. You notice them. The brand awareness and brand retention goes through the roof. Through the roof. So if you like cars at all, or you want to know more about the O.J. Simpson trial, check that out. I'll put the link in my show notes as well to that show. So the other branded podcast that I want to draw your attention to is, cars are sexy, right? And there's people who are like car aficionados. There are people who love cars. So that one I can understand how it would attract a subsect of people who are already interested in the Ford Motor Company. But what if your brand is something that is decidedly unsexy and rather mundane? What if you are in an industry that is, the margins are tight, you're competing on cents on the dollar, and I'm talking about groceries. I'm talking about food, groceries. I love food most days, but I'm not a foodie, but I can appreciate how marketing food is a challenge. So there is a brand in the United States, you may have heard of them, called Trader Joe's. And I have never shopped at Trader Joe's because I've just never had occasion to shop there when I'm in the States. But this podcast got sent to me years ago, pre-pandemic, maybe in the pandemic, might have been in the pandemic. And it's called Inside Trader Joe's. And I listened to the first few episodes. They're now dozens of episodes into the show. They have committed. They have gone all in inside Trader Joe's. And it made me want to get in my car and drive across the border and buy coconut curry chicken from their prepared food aisle. It made me want to do that. I learned all about how the company started. I learned about how they hire. I learned about how much fun they have. I learned about how they source and develop their own products. But I learned about it in a way that made me excited to shop there and about the brand. And it had no whiff, not a whiff of it being an advertisement. Not at all. And that is the power of a podcast. I remember distinctly, I threw on the episode and I was cooking in the kitchen. I had the slow cooker going. I was prepping meals for the week. I think I was prepping bottles because my little one I was on maternity leave. Now I remember. So I was doing all of my daily chores and I was listening to this show and I was like, oh man, I really could go for some coconut curry chicken from Trader Joe's right now. How do I get my hands on that? And that is also proven. If you download our in-depth report, again, linked in the show notes, you'll see that there is a connection between what we're doing when we're listening to podcasts and our brain's ability to comprehend and retain the information. In fact, the fact that most of us listen to podcasts while doing something else, like exercising, walking the dog, in my case, it was cleaning and housework, it actually enhances the neural pathways. It's not a Netflix and chill kind of approach to absorbing the content. Because I don't know about you, when I sit down on the couch and watch Netflix, especially if I'm in a frame of mind where I just want to turn off at the end of a day, I'll flip on Netflix with my husband on the couch, the kids are in bed. I'll have a glass of wine or a cup of tea or something like that. And if I have my phone in my hand, I'm also doom scrolling on Threads or on Instagram or on LinkedIn, and Netflix is playing in the background, and I'm not really absorbing anything. I'm literally zoned out. I'm in that like death scroll neuro borderline, just like catatonic, right? But when we're listening to podcasts by choice, you flip it on and then you choose to do an active task, house clean, vacuum, grocery shopping, walking the dog, going for a jog or doing your exercises or whatever it is for the day. Your brain is in a more active and receptive state. You naturally receive that information and you naturally expose yourself to the emotional impact more readily. And the science proves this. So if you're doing that, and that's just because people listen with their headphones and they're just immersed in what you're saying, their bodies are doing its own thing. There's no distractions and the brain is receiving all of that information, all of that emotional impact, all of that brand affinity. And it sticks. It sticks. We remember it. So that's what happened to me with the Trader Joe's show. And I'm happy to see that they have continued on and on and on. And I often reference it as one of the greatest examples of something that you would look at. You're like, a grocery store has a podcast? They do. And it is one of the pillars of their marketing because it creates that locked in brand affinity. I can't say for certain that it sells salad or whatever else Trader Joe's sells. You're not necessarily drawing a direct line between someone who listened to the podcast and someone who immediately goes out and spends hundreds of dollars on groceries at Trader Joe's. But I'm telling you about this show, and I have no skin in this game. That's how good it is. That's the power of branded content. So I'm going to link to all of those today down in the show notes, as well as our in-depth report. And here is my suggestion to you. If you are at all curious about what branded content could do for your brand, if you are a retail brand, if you are a not-for-profit with a brand, if you are an organization that works with stakeholders and you need to get them to buy in, some sort of social licensing, reach out. Let's have a chat. Honest to God, I am happy to help you see how this new burgeoning form of content marketing can work for you. This isn't about spray and pray anymore with your ads. This is about going deep with emotional affinity, with brand retention, and having fun. I mean, a true crime series about a hamburger? Hilarious. And that's the response that you want. Remember to rate and review The Fourth Draft wherever you get your podcasts, and leave me a comment. Find me on LinkedIn. Email us hello@storystudionetwork.com. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Erin Trafford. This is The Fourth Draft.